See, I told you we were going to talk about things apart from Nintendo, though truth be told, I'm still kind of getting a feel for this kind of vid, so I figured for the next one we'd do something a bit more softball and just throw a list up there. But I figured we'd do something at least a little outside of the normal top 10 whatevers box. I mean, I don't want these videos to turn into Watch Mojos or anything. So, you know that one guy in your group of friends, maybe it's even you, who, when the inevitable remake that fucking no one asked for comes out, in theaters or store shelves or what have you, they'll inevitably say, you know, if they're gonna remake something, why don't they remake the bad stuff so it has another chance? Well, today, we're gonna call that guy's bluff. This is a list of 10 bad games or series that, well, maybe because of a good premise or an unfortunate development cycle or what have you, I feel could be good if through some hypothetical miracle they fell into the right hands and were given a second shot at life. A few ground rules here. To be considered for this list, the game in particular does have to be considered bad, or at the very least to be generally worse than it should have been. I mean, I hated the ending to Mass Effect 3 as much as anyone, but that's still like 80-90% of a good game. So, you know, stuff like that doesn't count. Only one game per series, with one or two exceptions where pretty much the entire series has just never had a hit. As much as we like to shit on Sonic, he has had plenty of good games, even in modern times. And most importantly, it's my own damn list and my own damn opinion, so if you feel damn differently, don't shit your pants in the comments or anything. Cool? Cool. Number 10. Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. I know most people don't play fighting games for the story, but I still don't feel like that's an excuse to not try and make something good. Fighting games, which are literally designed by their very nature to have an expansive amount of characters, settings, and conflicts, are ripe for the picking when it comes to telling potentially good stories. All of the tools are literally handed to you on a silver platter. All you gotta do is build something cool with all of them. Most developers just make the mistake of trying to make something palatable with all the ingredients, but MK Mythology Sub-Zero had the potential to build something really cool around just one of the series' more compelling characters, without necessarily having to shoehorn every other Tom, Dick, and Harry in there. If they had pulled this off, well, we could have built an entire world's worth of intrigue, story, and character development around each major figure in the series, building up the next proper Mortal Kombat games into a potentially full-blown epic with massive stakes and scale and propensity ahead of its time. But a rushed development, clunky, unintuitive controls, and some of the cheapest level design ever dreamed of prevented this mythology from becoming a full-blown fable. Seriously, playing this game is like playing a middle finger coded into a PlayStation disc. But you know what? Yeah, I would still totally play a Sub-Zero game. Reboot that shit. If only to encourage an eventual Scorpion game. Now see, that would be the really cool one. Number 9. Takeshis Challenge. I bet I'm getting a lot of weird looks for this pick, but I've got my reasons. Follow me here. The original Takeshi's Challenge was notable for being so goddamn obtuse, weirdly structured, and balls to the wall hard that in its day it was considered one of, if not the shittiest game to have ever been released on any system. But that's the thing that kinda makes it disgustingly gorgeous. It's a game that just hates you at every turn. It hates you so much that even when you think you finally earned its respect, it still shuts you down, grotesquely, and it's so goddamn vengeful and sadistic that it actually reaches parody from the opposite direction. There's a full-blown comedic schadenfreude going on when playing, and especially when watching someone else play this game. And you know what? I'm convinced that if you did something like this today, it would go over like an absolute peach. I mean, there are people who make a damn good living playing games that are shitty, difficult, and tortuous, and given how easy it is to build up and strike communities around almost any game under the sun, figuring out the bizarre, bug-nutty challenges of a new Takeshi's Challenge could potentially strike up a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. Hell, once the internet became a thing and passing weird shit like this around became a global pastime, this game became kind of a weird little treat. Those aha moments of, no way, and you've gotta be shitting me, and you are not even gonna believe how this fucking puzzle is solved. It's like an Easter egg hunt where all the Easter eggs are replaced by embarrassing pictures from your childhood with the words "fuck you" written on them. It's tortuous, but I'll be damned if it's not funny. It would be a Let's Player's dream. or Nightmare, but either way, it's something people would watch and maybe even try out themselves just to say they did. I mean, Takeshi Kitano's still alive and he's still grumpy as ever. If we can talk him into Yakuza 6, why the hell not try with this? Number 8, Superman. Just Superman. Out of all the companies that have had their hands on one of the greatest American superheroes to have ever been created, how in the fuck has not even one of them been able to make an even mediocre Superman game? Why is it practically etched in stone that every Superman title just has to suck? Not counting games where Superman is thrown in with the rest of the Justice League or made of Lego or what have you. No, I'm talking main series, star of the show, Superman-ass Superman game. Why do they always suck? It seems like the easiest goddamn game in the world to make, too. Set up an environment full of baddies, line up some missions to accomplish, some people to save, some truth, justice, the American way, etc., and just let them loose. Superman has the powers of flight, super speed, super strength, X-ray vision, heat vision, and even super fucking breath, not to mention a ton of stuff I'm probably forgetting, and you're telling me you can't make something playable out of that? And don't give me the old licensed games are bullshit either. Spider-Man was able to eke out some good games. Batman has had plenty of good titles. Hell, even franchises like the X-Men and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have been able to rake a few classics under their belts. The idea behind Superman alone should make him one of the easiest characters to write a successful game around. The fact that it's never been done even once is downright shameful. I'm not even a Superman guy. I fucking hate Superman. Fucking goody two-shoes piece of shit. But even I think he deserves at least one good game, even if Goku is better. Hell, even Goku's had more good games than he has. How fucked up is that? Number 7, Alone in the Dark, 2008. You gotta feel bad for the Alone in the Dark series. It was literally the game that lit the fuse for the genre that would become survival horror. Almost every horror game made since 1994, from Resident Evil to Bloodborne, owes a gigantic debt to Infogrames' original Lovecraftian romp through unknowable terror. But apart from the original game, which, truth be told, is aged about as well as a carton of milk in the middle of the Sahara, and one debatably okay Resident Evil knockoff, this series has never been able to live up to the potential it might have had. In 2008, this reimagining of the series did seem promising. It was going to have gorgeous graphics, a bone-chilling story, and open-world gameplay that took you all over Central Park in New York City. There was a metric fuckton of cool mechanics and features too. No other survival horror game up to this point seemed as ambitious as Alone in the Dark did. But ambition is only as admirable as your execution, and this game's execution... Oh, man, if this game had the kinks worked out, it could have been a hit. I mean, hell, the game was a pile of garbage anyway, and it still at least turned a profit. Imagine how well it would have worked if the driving mechanics had been hammered out, if the inventory system was fixed up, if they didn't make Edward to be such a rampaging douche. This thing could have been Game of the Year. This thing was brimming with potential, and that's what makes it such a huge disappointment. I would love to somehow get the chance to play the Bizarro World good version director's cut of this game somehow. I mean, if only because, well, given where the series is now, I honestly don't think you could possibly get any worse. Number 6, Dantes Inferno. This is one of those games. You know the type that when you mention it to people, they're like, Dantes Inferno? Oh, wait, yeah, I remember that game, huh? Wonder if it was any good. Well, the short answer is... I mean, it actually may be too good to qualify for this list. It depends on what you're into, I guess. It's enjoyable, but I'm putting it on here because the game wasn't really as good as most people tend to remember it. I mean, the combat is crazy milquetoast. Your projectile weapon was so OP, it was kind of the only feasible way to get around certain sections, and there was some level design and story decisions here that really made this game more tedious and groan-inducing than it should have been. It was designed as a God of War clone for EA to try and rush out and profit off of before Sony could release God of War 3 and take all that sweet muns. And the seams that stick out from its rushed development, no pun intended, do make this title really rough around the edges. But I think it deserves another chance, mostly because there's a terrific premise in following out the divine comedy like it's a goddamn slasher fic and you're the slasher. Its only real crime is just how hard it tries to impress Senpai Kratos. It barely has any identity of its own. If the developer had been allowed to take the core concept and do whatever they wanted with it, I feel like we could have gotten something absolutely wicked from it. Again, no pun intended. If EA ever decides to hawk off a bunch of their IPs that they'll never do anything with, I would love to see a Dantes Inferno that's allowed to play by its own rules. I mean, can you imagine if someone like, say, Naughty Dog got their hands on this property? Yeah, now it's not so crazy of an idea, is it? Number 5, Sonic Boom. I know I said I was gonna lay off of Sonic for this vid, but this title really gives me the red ass.
The red ass?
The foundational premise for Sonic Boom was pretty much what this video is about. It was taking a long, maligned, and decaying series and giving it a fresh coat of paint. Yeah, there were some good titles in the later days, but even back then we could all agree that Sonic's salad days were far behind him. A reboot and redesign was exactly what this series needed, and they did change a lot of things for the better, I think. They gave the characters more distinctive personalities and looks and character traits. And they still face-planted it. I guess this is almost an example of how rebooting a bad series can sometimes make things worse. But it still shouldn't have been this bad. Even the show it's based upon is, from what I've heard at least, pretty watchable. I mean, how did they mess this up? Well, the same way Sega always messes up the Sonic games, by rushing the thing out to meet unrealistic deadlines and just praying all the pillow clutchers don't notice and buy it anyway. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, if that's the case, then Sega should have been fucking sanctioned around 2006. They literally set the pins up to fix a lot of Sonic's core problems, and as quickly as you can say bounce pad, they did the same thing they always do and just rolled a gutter ball. If Sonic Boom lives to see another console game, that's console game, not handheld mind. Sega, please do two things. A, keep development in-house. This is your baby. I mean, fucking treat it like you give a damn about it. And B, give it a proper, non-crunchy, reasonable human development time. Look, we're willing to wait, okay? We've got Sonic Mania to tie us over. We can wait for a little bit. I mean, assuming that game doesn't suck shit too. Number 4, Alpha Protocol. Hey, speaking of Sega, oh man, this one was a disappointment. Alpha Protocol is one of those niche games that, depending on how your first experience with the game went, means you either love it or want to chuck it through a window anytime you see it. The game had a brilliant dialogue system that affected play in interesting and unique ways, and when the game was working properly, it made for a really fun action RPG. Like, this thing could have gone blow for blow with Mass Effect if it had played its cards right, but oh dear God, was it dealt a bad hand. Most of the RPG elements of this game were so broken that it probably would have been in the game's favor to just ditch the whole system entirely. It was extremely easy to bonk your character and basically make the game unwinnable and unplayable. And oh god, the bugs. Upon its initial release, this thing didn't need quality control so much as it needed the goddamn Orkin Man. This game was so buggy it made Assassin's Creed Unity's launch look like Doom 2016. Again, some of this blame can be set on Sega, this time more for budget cuts than time constraints, though there was plenty of internal struggles within Obsidian proper that made this thing go all buggery too. I mean, remember, this was pre-Fallout New Vegas, Stick of Truth Obsidian, and this title just kinda got lost in the confusion of a messy development. Again, the germ of potential is alive and kicking in this game, and it could have really scored big. I would love to see another crack at this title, especially since Obsidian have basically all but perfected their technique in RPG making. Yeah, let them have another try at this now. These days, I'm almost certain they would fucking nail it. Number 3, Bushido fucking Blade 2. Ah! Oh, this one strikes me on more of a personal note, but my fellow Bushido Blade fans out there feel my pain all too goddamn well here. Guys, there are fewer greater examples of a series pissing away all of its potential in one fell swoop than Bushido Blade 2. The original game is one of the single best games that ever came out for the original PlayStation, and it's one of my favorite fighting games. Period. It was a game that was amazingly simple to play, but deceptively crazy and fun to master. It had multiple characters, weapons, and styles of play to fit nearly any fighting style, and the attention to detail in the atmosphere, setting, and tone made it one of the most breathtakingly gorgeous games to play on the system. Yeah, it hasn't exactly aged well graphically, but still, this is one of the few games you can play that will actually make you feel like a samurai. Square hit it out of the park with this title, and what did they follow it up with? My bouncy Bushido tits! Oh, they made the environments uglier, made the story more stupid and video gamey, basically killing the game's exquisite atmosphere and tone in one fell swoop, and they didn't even retain the original game's stellar mechanics. They dumbed down the controls, removed parrying altogether, and turned the game into a downright hideous mess to play. This game isn't so much a sequel as it is a remake of the first title if it were remade by howler monkeys and idiots. This was a series that deserved so much better. Square Enix, I know you've got your hands in a lot of pies these days, but if you ever want to give one of your most underrated and underappreciated titles another day in the sun, I promise I'll be there to purchase it day one. As long as it isn't like episodic or some shit. Seriously, stop doing that. Number 2, The Adventures of Bayou Billy. You know, this is a game that should have set the world on fire back in 1989. Bayou Billy should have not only been successful, it should have been the hit game of the late 80s, early 90s. It was so far ahead of its time, it's kind of befuddling to really think about. It was an NES game, released in the 80s no less, that had side-scrolling beat-em-up action a la Final Fight, first-person on-rail shooter sections that you could play with a zapper, integrated driving sections with vehicular combat, stunning graphics for the time, a cheesy but doofily likable villain that taunts you throughout the entire game, and some of the absolute best fucking music to have ever graced an 8-bit console. And hell, the Japanese version even had multiple endings you could unlock. How many NES games can you think of that had multiple goddamn endings? This is crazy, right? It sounds absolutely killer on paper. You'd have played the shit out of that back in the day, wouldn't you have? So why didn't it take off? Well, more than likely because most people couldn't even get past the first goddamn stage. Guys, there's hard, there's NES hard, there's sadism, and then there's the adventures of Bayou Billy. The original Famicom game, Mad City, already had a pretty damn steep difficulty curve, but Konami, in their infinite wisdom, decided to make the game harder for Western audiences by tweaking several aspects of the gameplay without playtesting them. Enemies got more health and did more damage, you got less health and did less damage, certain areas were expanded with even more powerful enemies thrown in your path, you were given fewer bullets in the shooting stages, and the driving sections were redesigned. Well, to just plain suck, frankly. I could go on and on about this thing, and you know, someday I might, but frankly, yeah, this is a game I would love to see rebuilt from the ground up. Hell, if they'd held off on this title for a few years, this would have made a baller as fuck SNES title. In fact, you know, I'd love to see a redesign of this game in an SNES style. You know, something a la Wild Guns Reloaded would be fucking stellar. Keep the throwback feel of the original, add some aesthetic and gameplay improvements, sell it for between 20 and 30 bucks, and bam, you've got a slice of retro lovers gold right there. I mean, hell, if you wanted to be super lazy, you could just translate and release Mad City over here. That's a much better and actually playable version of this game, and it would still probably sell, at least to the nostalgia crowd. I mean, throw that on the virtual console. Hell yeah, people would eat that up. But given that this is a Konami property, yeah, those guys don't even like to put out good games. What hope does Bayou fucking Billy have? And finally, number 1, Duke Nukem Forever. I mean, okay, this one's a no-brainer, so much so that it almost feels like a cop-out, but hey, sometimes an easy point is one worth scoring, and in this case, yeah, this shouldn't have happened. You know, for as crap as DNF turned out to be, I'm still convinced it didn't have to be this way. The success of titles like Wolfenstein The New Order, Doom 2016, Shadow Warriors 1 and 2, and hell, even Rise of the fucking Triad to a lesser extent, showed us that nostalgia baiting the old 90s PC crowd can work wonders in your favor, but if you're gonna do that, you have to do two things. A, keep the stuff people loved, and B, lose the stuff that doesn't work anymore. And DNF is maybe the best example on this list of a game that got those two pages completely mixed up. It got rid of a ton of stuff we wanted to see out of a Duke game by instigating Call of Duty Halo-style regenerating health, limited gun capacities, and turret sections, all trends that were well beyond tired by 2011, while keeping a lot of stuff from the original game that's aged terribly, like all the shitty puns, all the weird gross misogyny, all the goddamn alien rape. Really? It's a game that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a remake or an homage or a new direction, so it tried to do a little bit of all of those things and failed at all three. You know what they should have bloody well done? Just finished and released the Quake or Unreal 2 versions of the game and released it as a straight up true to form retro throwback. Fuck, this version of Duke Nukem Forever was the one I always wanted to play, so yeah, how about just that? Duke Nukem 3D World Tour pretty much proved that you can still design new stuff for an old game and it can still be fun. I'd love a shot to play the game that never was, you know? Or hell, if you're too chicken shit to do that, just reboot Duke entirely. Nukem is basically an amalgamation of 90s pop culture all smushed and Cronenberged into one douchebag with sunglasses, but now that we're well over 20 years past that era, there's no need for him. Redesign him from the ground up. Adapt him into modern culture. Change things about him that don't need to stay bog standard. Hell, you could even change his gender and make him a kick-ass, sassy, take no BS modern heroine. See, that would probably sell like... Wait, what? 3D Realms already tried that? Oh, no kidding? Oh, well, how'd it turn out? Oh, never mind then. Well, that's about it for this list. Do you agree, disagree, was your choice not on here? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and remember people, the only opinion that really matters is your own. Cheers.